Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moments. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Throne of Steel. So let's start. Light prayers sealed Hell's descent just like that. A tiny golden light was locking that terrifying darkness in midair. Shen Yuan Yang became blank, and Tan Wan too. They obviously were aware of the identity of the one who stopped the demon's attack. A little earlier, they had told him to scram from the fortress. A little earlier, Tan Wan even issued a challenge against him. At that very moment, Tan Wan's emotions became indescribable, but mostly full of shock. Close to 3,000 mags didn't manage to stop this terrifying forbidden spell, yet that person managed it all alone. Tan Wan believed that Long Haochen surely was using cheap tricks, and that the situation won't last long. But the courage to stand in front of such a super forbidden spell was already something no ordinary person could show. Feelings of shame appeared in both Tan Wan and Shen Yuan Yang. They were trying to put themselves in his stead. Did I really dare challenge such a person? Tan Wan's shock was the greatest, because she had personally seen the appearance of this Golden Foundation Knight, the extreme youth of this provisional Saint Knight head of the Night Temple. Tan Wan remembered firmly the time she rushed to her teacher, to ask him, is he really as young as he looks? Li Xingxi only looked down in acknowledgement, shocking Tan Wan to no limits at that time. A knight looking even younger than herself has actually already reached the 8th step. And he's the captain of Lin Xin's Demon Hunt Squad, and moreover, the provisional Saint Knight head of the Night Temple. Could there really be such a large gap separating him and herself? Now, Long Haochen was using his own strength to prove to Tan Wan the gap between the two of them. Keep launching attacks, what are you all waiting for? Lin Xin's voice was amplified by his spiritual energy, encompassing the whole Tombal Mountain Pass. The mags awakened from his call, and resonating chants were performed all across the fortress. Two figures simultaneously flew above the Tombal Mountain Pass, heading straight to Long Haochen's side. They stopped to Haochen's left and right. It was a strange thing that due to light prayer's confinement, even the aura of Hell's descent was suppressed, liberating all the mags on the fortress from its influence. The two that flew out were Kia and Lin Xin. The sickle of the god of death was already in Kia's hand as she was covered in a bizarre grey layer of mist. Her body was devoid of killing intent, but she stared coldly at the Hell's descent opposite Long Haochen. In case Long Haochen's light prayers couldn't be kept going, she would replace him to face off against that powerful darkness elemental forbidden spell. Lin Xin was standing on the other side, completely different from Kia's state of power story. He came to a stop right after arriving near Long Haochen, and launched a fire elemental attack with even more splendid execution than in a textbook, towards the pitch-black forbidden spell. The fire crystal staff was pointed forward, and an immense bursting fireball bombarded the Hell's descent straight on. Lin Xin remembered firmly that Long Haochen had told him one thing at the time before he elevated himself high to resist the forbidden spell, attack. With the tacit understanding between Lin Xin and Long Haochen, Lin Xin immediately understood his intention at the time he confined the enemy's attack. Long Haochen could only resist and not annihilate the attack. But he could gain some time for the Tombal Mountain Pass, within which they would have to do their utmost to weaken or extinguish Hell's descent's power. Right after the first blue-colored bursting fireball was fired, a second one appeared in Lin Xin's hands. The instant cast of the offensive spell of the 5th step bursting fireball could be due to storage in a magic tool, but how about the second and third one? This instant, the fire crystal staff in Lin Xin's hand entered a quick-fire mode, shooting immense deep blue-colored fireballs one after another toward Hell's descent. Each fireball that landed produced a huge explosion and carried blue flames along. Although the results weren't distinct, any sighted person could tell that Lin Xin's series of attacks produced some sunken areas in the places that were hit. In other words, his attacks were effective, but don't forget that he's only one person attacking by himself. The destructive power of the Heart of Fire's flames could thereby be seen. The instant Lin Xin was done firing his 18th bursting fireball, an immense blue skull appeared above his fire crystal staff, forming his 19th successive attack. After just a split second of adjustment, dragon-shaped blue flames spread from Lin Xin's back. This was the piece of legendary equipment called Fire Dragon's Wings. Increasing spiritual gathering and speed by 100%, it carried the additional ability Fire Dragon's Defense. The current Lin Xin did not need it for defense but for an acceleration of his spiritual energy gathering. As the Fire Curse technique was executed, he unfolded the Fire Dragon's wings, and once again shot bursting fireballs, another series of 18 of them. From the start of his act to the termination of his 36th bursting fireball, a total of less than a minute had passed. At this very moment, Lin Xin was making a display far above his own level. This offensive power and offensive speed would not necessarily be matched by a mage of the 8th step. And moreover, this was without counting the power of Heart of Fire. Most of all, his rupturing fireballs were all bombarding the same area. At the end of his 36 bursting fireballs, a resonant phoenix cry was heard above Lin Xin, and a massive blue fire phoenix soared up, clashing straight against that devil's portrait with its brilliant blue fire. That violent bombardment produced a series of violent waves against the devil portrait. Only then did Lin Xin's series of attacks terminate. The most magnificent spells aren't necessarily the most effective, but the focus of Lin Xin's attacks clearly gave the ideal efficiency. At last, as the blue fire phoenix spiritual stove launched its attack, he threw some pills into his own mouth. Don't forget that he's also an alchemist, making his ability to last in the battlefield and his burst power go far beyond mags of the same grade. Lin Xin was naturally not the only one launching attacks. In the desperate crisis, all the mags in the fortress put their strongest magic abilities to use. They were attacking from all sides, controlling their power and even making it coil around to reach out for Hell's Descent's back to avoid wounding Long Haochen's group of 3. The stronger mags flew to Long Haochen's side like Lin Xin, to launch a full-force magic offense at close quarters. Afar, the Hell Demon God Marbas was standing dumbstruck, not daring to believe in his eyes. The instant light prayers was launched, he found out that the connection binding Hell's Descent to him was severed. Even for someone at the same level of cultivation as him, facing this powerful supra-forbidden spell was comparable to meeting with a full-force attack of the Demon God Emperor. He couldn't believe that the Mage Temple actually had the ability to seal this supra-forbidden spell in such a short time. He also knew that this seal couldn't possibly last for too long, but the Mage Temple's mags were extremely fast to react, attacking it with full force. In such a situation, after the seal ends, one could hardly say how much offensive power Hell's Descent would still hold. As the 5th demon god in the ranking, one of the top 5 demon gods in existence, Marbas naturally had quick wits as well. Waving his right hand toward the Tombal mountain pass, he made a low and vigorous shout, "Attack!" The Hell Demons were the core of the demon armies standing outside, but not the absolute majority of their forces. Following Marbas' order, the demon armies immediately charged towards the Tombal mountain pass in large tides. The power of Hell's Descent was warded off, but the mags present in the Tombal mountain pass were all occupied. In the meantime, Long Haochen found himself close to his limits. Although Light Prayers was mostly borrowing divine force to perform the seal, it also required a massive amount of spiritual energy to be maintained. Long Haochen could amplify its efficiency through the divine snail shield, but the consumption speed of his spiritual energy was still massive. Right now, the multicolored golden light coming out from him clearly assumed an unstable stance, and could already collapse at any time. Kia was holding the side of the god of death in her 2 hands, unconsciously gripping it tightly. In case Long Haochen's light prayers terminates, they will be the ones bearing the brunt and become the targets of this forbidden spell. Cia knew that at that time she would have to fight to earn Long Haochen some time, to allow him to have the time to transport Lin Xin and himself to the Tower of Eternity. Right in this crucial juncture, 6 light balls were suddenly shot out from the Tombal mountain pass. These 6 light balls all reached about 10 meters diameter, forming a large hole. After its rapid descent, red, blue, green, yellow, gold and black-colored brilliances flared from it, and formed the shape of a Star of David in the sky as they interwove, landing right inside Hell's Descent. A 6-colored cover then rose, greatly weakening the supra-forbidden spell. The golden light vanished, and Long Haochen let out a stuffy groan, terminating light prayers. Star King then helped Haochen stabilize his posture by the use of his own spiritual energy to avoid him falling down. Due to the loss of Light Prayer's seal, Hell's Descent forbidden spell power suddenly struggled to break free from that 6-colored barrier, as the entity in question trembled violently. At the current time, the situation inside those 6 light balls was clearly visible. Each one contained 6 mags, making a total of 36 people. Each ball was under the lead of a mage. This was a powerful seal that they joined hands to unleash. If the Hell's Descent forbidden spell was at its peak, they may not necessarily have managed to seal it, but after the last series of depletions, these 6 mage deities of the 9th step and 30 saint magic tutors of the 8th step joined hands to temporarily seal the forbidden spell. The magic tutor regiment had finally reached out and completed their spell, taking over Long Haochen's duty. In the meantime, an immense green radiance soared from inside the Tombal mountain pass, reaching a high altitude before slowly falling. Seeing the green figure extending over more than 100 meters, the weakened Long Haochen was in great shock. That green figure looked human-shaped and was actually an enlarged version of the head of the Mage Temple, Wind Elemental Mage Li Xingxi. Right now, Li Xingxi looked extremely imposing despite his short and stout build. Clad in green armor, his hands were holding a huge war blade. Green light curled over his whole body, and bursting gales kept rising around his body. At every attack, the green light coming out from his body also gained in intensity. Actually, Li Xingxi reached the area far before Long Haochen's performance. Even at his level of cultivation, the super-forbidden spell Hell's Descent was an extremely thorny issue. After arriving, he still needed time. It was obviously impossible for him to fully use his most powerful ability instantly. Right as he was prepared to come up, Long Houchen had made this sudden display in the battlefield, sealing Hell's Descent. Although this wasn't sufficient to totally turn the situation around, it was exactly what Li Jingxi needed, giving him just enough time. Seeing Long Houchen close to his limits, the finely prepared Li Jingxi made his move alongside the mage regiment. The huge green figure drifted nimbly, arriving ahead of the multi-elemental seal. Hacking the long blade, it immediately struck at the terrifying Black God's Descent forbidden spell. A bizarre scene followed. One could see that the instant the blade was chopped, all the wind in the sky had disappeared. The next instant, part of Hell's Descent was cut into thin pieces of pitch-black spiritual energy. Even more miraculously, the Black Hell's Descent was enveloped in a greenish-blue splendor. Li Jingxi was using the incarnation of the Wind God to shoot these black rays back to the distant demons, right at the demon army's vanguard. First broke out a terrible hurricane cutting everything in its way, then Hell's Descent's power was unleashed. One could clearly see that for a range of 1,000 meters in and around those thin black pieces, the ground subsided 10 meters. Even if they were of darkness attributes, all the demons in this range were dissolved thoroughly. Li Jingxi's performance had only begun. Extending the blade in his hand, he cut sharply through Hell's Descent before projecting the sliced parts onto the demon army. Only a few slashes had already suppressed completely the demon army's vanguard. This was the display of a true powerhouse. At the sight of this scene, Long Houchen couldn't help but have a dazzled and stunned feeling. He was totally unable to see how Li Jingxi accomplished that. Despite being a mage, he descended like a deity and was fully showing his martial prowess. The mere word powerful was already insufficient to describe this ability. Almost as soon as he appeared, the whole situation was turned around, turning defeat into victory. He even used the super-forbidden spell Hell's Descent to his advantage, truly deserving the appellation of #1 powerhouse among the 6 great temples. The magic tutor regiments were not only composed of those 36. Several dozen more people landed onto the fortress one after another, as the mage squads rested, reorganized, and recovered spiritual energy for the sake of being ready to continue the battle at any time. At this point, the demon surprise attack was already neutralized, and Li Jingxi's series of attacks already got rid of close to 10,000 demons. The hell demon god Marbas finally couldn't bear any more and made his move. Despite their enormous previous losses, he couldn't keep looking on helplessly as Li Jingxi was slaughtering his subordinates. The figures of the 8 demon gods flickered, rising in altitude, and they put their full strength into stopping the pieces of Hell's Descent spiritual energy thrown by Li Jingxi. For a moment, the fluctuations of spiritual energy in the sky expanded greatly, splattering across in many colors. Li Jingxi had turned into a wind god, facing off the 8 enemies by himself, and without being at a disadvantage at all. Although this was related the 8 great demon gods' weakened state, accomplishing this much showed the strength of this wind user. Long Houchen's group was back at the Tombal mountain pass. While recovering spiritual energy, Long Houchen's look never separated from Li Jingxi. Being able to witness the fight of a powerhouse of this level was really a great assistance to him. And by relying on his powerful mental force and great perception focused upon the waves of spiritual energy, Long Houchen gradually understood Li Jingxi's true battle methods. This actually should be a magic using Li Jingxi's body as its core. Being a god's chosen one, Long Houchen could feel that Li Jingxi's spell was really borrowing power from the wind god. Only, Long Houchen's reliance on the power of the goddess of light was thanks to his identity as a god's chosen one, but Li Jingxi's reliance on the power of the wind god was thanks to his great strength and affinity to the wind element. Long Houchen made the conservative estimate that Li Jingxi's internal spiritual energy was over 300,000, and he should have at least one divine tool in his hand. The battle didn't last for much longer. The demon gods were all selfish beings, and perceiving Li Jingxi's great power, Marbas was unwilling to have a fight to the death against him. While the 8 great demon gods were holding back Li Jingxi's attacks, the order of retreat was already transmitted. This rapid retreat immediately caused their morale to plummet. The super-forbidden spell Hell's Descent continued to gradually decline due to being cut unceasingly by Li Jingxi, thereby decreasing the force going against the seal. Finally, Hell's Descent went to smoke as it was squeezed inside the 6-colored formation. That signaled the termination of this battle of attack and defense. Li Jingxi didn't keep chasing after the retreating demons. Holding his blade horizontally, he looked into the distance as the demon gods drifted away, showing a smile towards the heavens. The Tombal mountain pass already became a sea of pleasure. This battle was certainly dangerous, but its final ending was certainly marvelous. The Tombal mountain pass didn't have a single deceased, but the enemy sustained heavy damage. At least for the time being, they won't dare launch another attack. At the time of the annihilation of Hell's Descent, Long Houchen brought his comrades out of the fortress. Having accomplished his duty, he went down. Staying any further would be meaningless, and besides, he didn't want to have to meet Tan Wan and Xian Yuan Yang. No matter how guilty, awkward, or persistently cold the counterpart would be, he was unwilling to have to face them. At the time of Long Houchen's departure, the wind god in the sky turned round slowly, giving a glance toward their departing figures, a thin smile forming on the corners of his mouth. 3 days later. Shina, just come with us. Take it as a plea from me, okay? Must I leave you here? Lin Xin was as anxious as an agitated cat, spinning around Li Xin in the room. Li Xin gave him a funny look. Will you ever fix that lack of resolution? Her words were formulated that way, but her expression was full of warmth. We are all demon hunters. Just like you have your team, I also have my own. How could I abandon my teammates? Moreover, my strength is already unable to keep up with Houchen and you. By coming along, I can only become a burden for you. I have already discussed with Luke 11, and we chose to remain in the Tombal Mountain Pass for now. This place is by far safe enough. You are a man and a part of the 64th Commander Grade Demon Hunt Squad. We still have a long time before us. Or do you really want to stay behind for my sake? We are demon hunters, and since the day we took this path, our lives are already not only our own. Could it be that you really don't understand that? Lin Xin became silent. He had already been trying to convince Li Xin for close to 1 hour. After that battle from 3 days ago, the Tombal Mountain Pass situation was quite stable, and the demons had almost no possibility of breaking through this fort. In addition to that, due to the relationship between the Mage Temple and the Night Temple, Long Houchen and his comrades decided to keep heading southwards to assemble with their other comrades. Lin Xin naturally found things difficult to manage in this situation. As Li Xin's and his emotions had escalated, how could he be willing to part with her? Although he knew that Li Xin was right, he still found it hard to accept deep inside. Li Xin stood up and came in front of Lin Xin, leaning towards him and drawing close to his waist. Idiot, I should be the one worrying. Because you will keep becoming stronger and stronger, you will also be facing more and more challenging missions. Promise me to live well. Haven't you been always wanting to do it? Today, I can give myself to you, hoping that you can gain more responsibility and defend yourself with good care. No matter how long it takes, I will be waiting for you. Hearing Li Xin, Lin Xin couldn't help but tremble profusely. If these were ordinary times, he would definitely be carried away by the excitement. But as they were on the verge of separating, how could he get up happily? No, Shina. I want to marry you formally. I cannot let you feel wronged, especially at such a time. I love you, Shina, and really can't bear to leave you. Lin Xin embraced Li Xin tightly, feeling her form and warmth, and becoming unable to hold his tears. If one person within the 64th Commander Grade Demon Hunt Squad had to be picked as the weakest emotionally, that would be him. Li Xin suddenly struggled free of Lin Xin, and declared very fiercely, "What do you mean, you can't let me feel wronged? I should be the one who shouldn't let you feel wronged. Do you think nothing will happen just because you said no? You're a mage, and this lady is a knight. If you have a problem, use your magic to stop me." Under Lin Xin's stupefied look, his body was pulled toward the bed by Li Xin. This was a battle between a knight of the 6th step and a mage of the 7th step. At such a close distance and in a small room, one can well imagine who won the fight. Right as Lin Xin was forced into a great physical battle by Li Xin, Long Houchen was meeting 2 guests. "Greetings, Saint Knight Head." At the time Long Houchen opened the door, the guests outside respectfully bowed to him. The 2 in question were Tan Wan and Shen Yuanyang. Tan Wan looked the same as usual, and Shen Yuanyang visibly felt quite awkward. Lowering his head slightly, he didn't dare look straight at Long Houchen. Long Houchen looked at them in astonishment. "The 2 of you are..." Tan Wan didn't have that pride and coldness she used to have the first time they met, asking with a smile, "Can you let us inside to have a talk? Please?" Long Houchen stepped aside from the entrance, letting the 2 inside. For now he was still clad in his golden foundation armor. For the sake of concealing his identity, even when cultivating by himself in the room, he won't easily take it off. But luckily, this armor was quite comfortable and never made him feel unwell. "Saint Knight Head, we came to apologize to you. We were in the wrong in the matter of that time. Also, we wanted to thank you for your assistance to the Tombal Mountain Pass." "Sorry." As she spoke so, Tan Wan bowed very respectfully to Long Houchen. This was not a mage salute, but a sincere bow which could be considered exaggerated between 2 people of the same generation. Standing aside, Shen Yuanyang also bowed to him, but his movement even looked a bit more implausible. After the battle of that day, Long Houchen was once again summoned by the Mage Temple's head Li Xingxi. No one knew about the contents of their talk, but a short time later, the Mage Temple made a public announcement about the heroic deeds of the Saint Knight Head known as 12th Golden Knight, and expressed the eternal deep feelings of friendship the Mage Temple would forever have towards him. Long Houchen showed a faint smile. "The 2 of you don't need to act that way. You did nothing wrong. I just hope that in the short future, the relationship between the Mage Temple and the Night Temple may be improved. At that time I may need support from the 2 of you." Tan Wan didn't react to this, but seemingly shifted subjects. Saint Nighthead, from what I heard, your group is about to leave. Long Houchen nodded. The Tombal mountain pass is already invulnerable to attack. I need to see the other temples. Tomorrow in the morning, I will be leaving. After pondering silently for a short time, she suddenly expressed, Saint Nighthead, I have a presumptuous request. Long Houchen was startled by the unexpected declaration, I am listening. Tan Wan declared, I hope to challenge you 1 versus 1 without use of any weapon, only relying on our own abilities. I know that I am by far unable to compare against you, but I really want to know just how far the gap between the two of us is. At this point, she seemed to be afraid that Long Houchen could misunderstand, and continued, ever since becoming a mage, I have always put my whole efforts into cultivation, setting teacher as a goal, in the hopes of one day becoming a powerhouse such as teacher, to fight for the Alliance, the humanity, and thoroughly annihilate demonkind. I hope that you can be the second goal I'd set for myself. I am merely asking for your guidance, and have no other intention. Long Houchen replied after pondering shortly, understood. In that case, I will ask Captain Tan to look for a secluded area. And there cannot be any spectator. Okay. Tan Wan seemed to understand Long Houchen's worries, and consented immediately. To one side, Xianyuan Yang seemed to want to say something, but bore his words until the end. Long Houchen didn't inform Han Yu and Kia, and was led by Tan Wan to enter a wide door in the 4th floor of the Mage Temple. Tan Wan expressed to Xianyuan Yang, wait for me here. Xianyuan Yang suddenly gave Long Houchen a pleading look, but Long Houchen apologetically said, Captain Xianyuan will come to understand my troubles in the future. Captain Tan, please enter. Tan Wan pushed the door and entered alongside Long Houchen. This was a wide training space, circular, without spectators. It reached a total diameter of about 50 meters, which couldn't be considered a very large space from the point of view of a mage. This is an area for the temple to conduct tests. With Xianyuan guarding the door, no one should come to bother us. As she said that, Tan Wan's staff disappeared from her hand in a movement, then she undid her outer gown, putting into her ring that magical gown that was releasing strong magical waves, and exposing the long green skirt inside. Today, she had challenged Long Houchen to find out the true gap between them. That day, the scene of Long Houchen making use of light prayers to block the Hell's descent shocked her truly greatly. With her good vision, she also could determine that Long Houchen had made use of a divine tool at that time. So Tan Wan remained in the end somewhat unconvinced. Without the use of a divine tool or a piece of equipment of epic tier such as the Golden Foundation armor, could he really be much stronger than me? She really wanted to know the answer to that question, and went looking for Long Houchen in the end. She expressed her apologetic feelings as well, so as to not let these things affect her state of mind at the time of the battle. Long Houchen replied, Captain Tan, after we are done comparing notes this time, no matter who wins, I will have a request for you, and hope to have your help on this. Tan Wan looked distracted. What kind of request? Long Houchen showed a faint smile. Let's talk about it after our battle ends. Okay. Giving her reply, Tan Wan immediately headed towards one side of the training field. In a situation where both parties fight without their equipment, a knight is much more disadvantaged than a mage. That's because a knight will not only be deprived of his equipment, but also his mount. This will greatly weaken him globally. And for a mage, not using his equipment only affects the matter of purity. But Tan Wan was unwilling to take advantage of Long Houchen so much, and therefore chose this training field that was only 50 meters wide. As an unfavorable terrain for a mage, the two parties could be said to have equivalent handicaps. In a flash of golden light, the Golden Foundation armor was taken off. He didn't take out either of his own heavy swords, and drew back to reach the edge of the training field just like Tan Wan did. At the sight of Long Houchen's handsome looks, Tan Wan couldn't help but lose spirits. Handsome guys weren't so terrible in her eyes, as she had already not much interest in the emotional aspect anymore. The increase of her cultivation became her single-minded target. So her shock pertained only to Long Houchen's age. Even if it was her second time seeing it, the shock didn't shrink at all. Saint Nighthead, I am coming. Tan Wan declared in seriousness. Please. A pair of green wings grew almost instantly on Tan Wan's back, and immediately, her right hand pointed a finger toward Long Houchen. A dozen wind blades were shot at his direction. Each of these wind blades followed its own path. Some went straight, some traced an arc, and some even coiled around the side. All Long Houchen's escape route seemed to be blocked off. He placed both hands behind his back and took 2 steps to the side, immediately swaying at a bizarre RYTHM. A series of spiritual energy collisions were heard and echoed unceasingly from the green brilliant rays. With both hands at his back, Long Houchen calmly walked out, not releasing the slightest surge of spiritual energy or counterattack from beginning to end. As the attacker, Tan Wan's senses of the opponent were the clearest. Long Houchen was using a special footwork, appearing slow but moving fast. In the end, He always escaped the wind blade's attacks by a hair's breadth, and sometimes even neutralized them by voluntarily letting two wind blades collide against each other. This process sounds simple, but required really good control of one's body as well as excellent prediction and speed, causing Tan Wan to gasp in amazement. This was the first time she was seeing someone actually avoid wind blades in such a manner. Of course, as the Wind Master's only disciple, her attacks had only started. While Long Houchen was walking his way out of the wind blades, Tan Wan kept chanting unceasingly, and balls of green light were shot from her fingertips, taking the shape of tornadoes on a small scale, reaching only 1/3 of a meter in diameter, drifting toward Houchen. There were a total of 12 small tornadoes. The whole training field let out bizarre whimpering sounds, flying in Long Houchen's direction with different speeds, as the rich wind essence in the air also turned a lot more frantic. A 1-against-1 between a mage and a knight was absolutely not about using the most powerful spell, but the most fitting ones. The 12 tornadoes used by Tan Wan all looked the same, but were actually absolutely different. Each of them was equivalent to a spell of the 6th step, and after letting out 12 of them, her pretty face had a pale look. After all, this was without any magic attire, and with her cultivation reaching the middle section of the 7th step, these were already her limits. Of these tornadoes, some were turning straight, some in reverse, but each one followed a different path. And in case one burst, the others will instantly be attracted by it, and almost immediately reach the enemy. Among single-targeted spells, these 12 small-scale tornadoes used quite complex magic. If its full power struck, it could match a single-targeted spell of the 8th step. Long Houchen's advancing pace slowed down, as those 12 tornadoes were sweeping from all directions. Lifting up his right hand, one could see a white light spread from within, taking the shape of a heavy sword 1.5 meters in length. Afterwards, Long Houchen shut his eyes, advancing his left foot, and slowly chopped with condensed spiritual energy. Materialization of spiritual highlandized energy? No, Long Houchen's cultivation didn't reach that step yet, as he was still unable to deploy spiritual highland to this degree. This was actually a well-known ability, Holy Sword. Using his hand as a blade obviously greatly limited the power of Holy Sword, but backed by the purity of his light spiritual energy, Long Houchen's weapon seemed not much different to a real heavy sword of light attribute. This chop seemed as light as a feather, following a slow movement, but still hit the first tornado that was about to reach him. Still far away, Tan Wan already had a complacent look. No matter how strong you are, as long as you come in contact with my tornado, it will activate the tornado's formation instantly. I want to see if you can withstand my spell of the 8th step without any defensive equipment. But the complacency on Tan Wan's face only lasted for a split instant, before turning into shock. As he cut into the tornado, Long Houchen didn't even cause a reaction from it. It looked like this tornado, characterized by its extreme cutting force, simply became an extension of his hand, lifted up alongside it. Long Houchen's presence disappeared immediately, completely blending into the surrounding wind essence. The other 11 tornadoes only coiled around him without launching any attack. As his right arm slightly vibrated, Long Houchen made a slashing motion as the tornado on the tip of his hand turned into dots of green light dissipating in the air. Holy Sword was still here after the first tornado disappeared. The other 11 immediately showed a reaction, all heading toward Long Houchen together. At this instant, Long Houchen's very slow figure accelerated all of a sudden, as Holy Sword in his hand made 11 successive very close cuts. All 11 tornadoes came to a stop in midair, and immediately disappeared without any trace. As his figure flashed across, crossing instantly 10 meters per step, Long Houchen arrived in front of Tan Wan in a flash. Tan Wan raised her arms almost out of subconscious mind, aiming 2 punches against Long Houchen, with green light coiling around her both hands, at a considerable punching speed. This was an unexpected martial strategy. Long Houchen actually wasn't caught unprepared by the blow, but didn't try to resist, letting Tan Wan's fists bombard his chest. Bang, bang. 2 sounds followed, but Long Houchen remained motionless. Tan Wan felt that the instant her hand imbued with light elemental spiritual energy landed on Long Houchen, it was immediately dispelled in the midst of vibrations without inflicting the slightest damage to his body at all. Long Houchen didn't launch a counteroffensive, remaining motionless. His hands were bent down to the 2 sides, as he stared focusedly at her. Letting down her 2 hands, Tan Wan had a lifeless look toward Long Houchen. "It's my loss." These words came out from her mouth with difficulty, but she had no other choice but to admit her own defeat. She could feel that Long Houchen's cultivation was far above hers, just too far above. It was not only his spiritual energy, but also his experience in real combat, as well as his added-up strength, perception, and uses of his abilities. He was just at a totally different level in all aspects. Long Houchen drew 2 steps back, increasing the distance separating Tan Wan to him. "Your last magic was quite powerful. If I wasn't a specialist in controlling frequencies in the air, resisting it would be very hard." Tan Wan had a bitter smile. "You don't need to console me. A loss is a loss. That's just the gap between the 2 of us. However, I have 2 questions. First, just how did you split my tornado formation? And second, you seemed already aware that I had learned martial arts, but this secret is only known to my teacher. Even Lin Xin didn't know about it. Could it be teacher who told you about it? It can't be. Tan Wan said with a bitter smile, you don't need to console me. A loss is a loss. That's just the gap between the two of us. However, I have two questions. First, just how did you split my tornado formation? And second, you seemed already aware that I had learnt martial arts, but this secret is only known to my teacher. Even Lin Xin didn't know about it. Could it be teacher who told you about it? This can't be. Long Haochen showed a faint smile. I had to go all out against your tornado formation. I previously self-created a technique called ripples of light. It is based on research on the frequencies of spiritual energy waves. For this reason, I had already found out that each of the tornadoes forming your tornado formation were all different. It wasn't as an act of contempt that I had shut my eyes, but to focus my attention on determining the variations on these tornadoes. If my response was wrong, they would have erupted with their true might. In the end, I determined the differences in their frequency and found the breaches in each tornado, in order to finally neutralize them. This took a large amount of focus to accomplish. Tan Wan still seemed unable to understand, but I have never seen something such as that sword intent of yours. Even the powerhouses from the warrior temple don't have anyone who's your match in this aspect. If I am not mistaken, you should have already reached the boundary of becoming one with your sword to be able to use that sword intent so unrestrainedly. It's definitely not a matter that is comprehended in one day or two. Just how did you reach such martial attainments? Long Haochen showed a slight smile. This question is even easier to answer. Just like you are training magic as well as martial arts, I am not only a guardian knight, but also a retribution knight. My skill with the sword is naturally an important object of focus. Tan Wan opened her eyes wide. Dual retribution and guardian knight? And you really are able to harmonize perfectly these two kinds of knight abilities. It appears that your knight temple is still far ahead of us. Reaching this point, she couldn't help but feel disappointed. Long Haochen continued, let me reply to your other question. It is indeed thanks to Li Shengxi that I know about your dual expertise in magic and martial arts. It's not that he has told me, but he has instead showed me. Because the day Head Li changed himself into incarnation of the wind god, I had a special feeling. Although he was using a powerful spell of the forbidden spell level that day, if he hadn't a sufficient martial mastery, he couldn't possibly have reached such a level of stability in the blade. This is how I had this audacious supposition. Actually, magic and martial arts are a set. To us knights, magic is used to supplement martial arts, and that's how knight abilities are constituted. Any of these abilities are drawing power from spiritual energy. Under such premises, it isn't impossible for mags to make breakthroughs thanks to martial techniques. But I suggest you put more efforts on increasing your external spiritual energy, otherwise your use of martial abilities will be limited by only relying on your internal spiritual energy. That is unless you one day reach Head Li's level of cultivation, where martial arts can be used through a forbidden spell. Tan Wan snorted at him, you are saying that so relaxedly, but how could it be so easy? Anyone would find it incomparably hard to train both martial arts and magic. A person has limited energy and obviously needs to make choices. Long Haochen nodded, you will have to ask guidance from Head Li about that, I cannot help you on this matter. Our battle is now over, right? Tan Wan let out an unhappy snort, you won. How about it? Still want to shame me further? Long Haochen broke into a laughter, you should really change this temperament, otherwise I'm afraid that it will affect your future cultivation. With unstable emotions, one can hardly manage to cultivate to the peak. Tan Wan was baffled. It's unknown whether she really assimilated Long Haochen's advice, as she once again shifted subjects. Haven't you said that you have a favor to ask me? Speak now. Since you won against me, I will do my best to answer to it. Long Haochen replied, I will soon leave alongside Lin Xin and the others, but Big Sister Shina will be remaining in the Tombal Mountain Pass alongside her demon hunt squad. I hope that you can help me look after them. I have always regarded Big Sister Shina the same as a biological elder sister. Her brows rising high, Tan Wan replied in fury, are you trying to shame me on purpose? You must have already learnt about the matter between Lin Xin and I, right? Want me to look after my sworn enemy? What a good idea. Long Haochen became quite helpless, I only hope that you can let go of these grudges. Come to mention it, this matter cannot be blamed on anyone. It was all the result of a freak combination of factors. Are you really planning on staying so rigid on the matter forever? In the future, both Lin Xin and you will surely become higher-ups for the Mage Temple. Don't tell me you think the contradiction between the two of you will not lead to issues in the Mage Temple's ranks. I know that you are finding it very hard to let go of the matter. I don't have a very good understanding of emotional matters either, so I can only advise you generally to heal your heart by letting go. Time is the best remedy, maybe one day you will come to find your true love, and involuntarily come to forgive Lin Xin. But I must emphasize on one point. No matter how strong you are in the Mage Temple, I hope that you won't wound Big Sister Shina. Otherwise, I won't ever let you get away with it, and won't even leave the Mage Temple in peace. Are you threatening me? Tan Wan coldly asked. Long Houchen indifferently replied, it can be considered so. I hope that the next time we meet, it will be as friends, and not as enemies. After saying that, he turned back to exit the room. Seeing his leaving figure, Tan Wan really had a special feeling. In front of this man, the one that has always been regarded as the #1 genius of the Mage Temple was actually so insignificant. Seeing him put his golden foundation armor back on, she felt as if she was looking at her teacher from behind. But he's far younger than me, . Unwell because of disappointment, Tan Wan found out with shock that she didn't have the courage to reject Long Houchen's request. She didn't dare. But must I really take care of that girl just as he said, . Early morning. Long Houchen, Kia, and Yu and Lin Xin all exited the Tombao mountain pass and headed to the south. Li Xin's eyes became hazy with tears at some points. Beside her were the members of her demon hunt squad. Even if he was an idiot, Luke Shu would find out about Long Houchen's arrival. His feelings of great sorrow even exceeded Tan Wan. After all, he had personally witnessed the growth of their demon hunt squad. After just a few years, he already found himself unable to chase further after them. The gap between them was already wide beyond any possibility to catch up. Not far away, Tan Wan and Xian Yuanyang stood there, following with their eyes the departing four. Xian Yuanyang felt as if relieved from a large burden, and his gloomy look was finally relaxed. He had always loved Tan Wan dearly, but Tan Wan cancelled their engagement because of Lin Xin's letter. He had never hated her for that, but had hated Lin Xin to the extreme. As Lin Xin's talent stood out in the Mage Temple, due to his exceptional performance in the Tombao Mountain Pass, Xian Yuanyang's bitter hate only kept deepening. He even privately provoked Lin Xin many times, out of fear that Tan Wan may be snatched by him. Seeing Lin Xin finally leave, Xian Yuanyang found out with amazement that the rancer filling him seemed to disappear as he departed. Although Tan Wan didn't want to admit it, she had just lost her greatest rival. Xian Yuanyang understood her more than anyone else and knew what he ought to do. Tan Wan suddenly came in front of Li Xin, telling her, "Don't cry." Li Xin had a terrible start, and looking at Tan Wan, she couldn't help but wrinkle her eyebrows. Lin Xin has just left, what does this girl still want? After pausing for a short time, Tan Wan declared, "You have a good brother. I will be writing off all our past matters. The bastard Lin Xin isn't in my memories anymore." After saying that, she immediately turned back away. Li Xin became lifeless, while Xian Yuanyang was greatly overjoyed. He understood that his opportunity had finally come. Maybe this was the arrival of the spring of his life. From the Tombao Mountain Pass to the south, the next stop was the southeastern fort. The southeastern mountain pass commanded by the Warrior Temple has always been interdependent with the Mage Temple. These two great temples were quite close, and they gave each other mutual help, so although the southeastern fort had a tough time, they still managed to repel the demon offensive. After 4 days of intense travel, Long Houchen and the other three finally reached this one set of city and fort they had visited before. The timing of their arrival was quite coincidental as the demon armies were right in the midst of launching a fierce offensive against the southeastern mountain pass. The 8 great demon gods standing outside the fort had yet to join the battle, but their demon god pillars' glows were fully encompassing their armies. A bitter battle was happening at high altitude, giving off a faint scent of blood. When looking down from a height, one could see scenes of bloodbaths. "Captain, what's to be done? Let's directly join the battle," Han Yu expressed to Long Houchen. With a nod, he replied, "Let's wait a little moment. First, search for Yuan Yuan." Despite being the Scion of Light, he also had his own selfish motives. Now that they were far and elevated high, Han Yu and he released light essence, expressing their status as allies. Assisting the southeastern mountain pass in fending off the demon army was a must, but helping Wang Yuan was even more pressing. Shutting his eyes, Long Houchen, riding Star King, swept his mental force through the southeastern fort's scope, looking for Wang Yuan's silhouette. Because of the war happening below, the fluctuations of spiritual energy were extremely frantic. It caused terrible interferences to his mental force, making his scouting a lot more challenging. Wang Yuan was indeed fighting on the southeastern fort. In her left hand was the gigantic Divine Soul Shield, and in her right hand, Bloodstorm. She was in a total slaughter, to the extent that she wouldn't be able to tell out how many enemies' blood was stained on her. This video will end here. Thank you for watching.